Good day, everyone. My name is Tyler from Northern Czech Property Inspections, and today I'm going to show you guys how a Northern Czech inspector would inspect your home's electrical panel. So before I even get into this, I want to make sure we have an adequate amount of clearance around the panel to be working safely. So there's no customer belongings in the front, and there's no wall behind me. Reason being, if I were to trip over something here, I could potentially put my face or my hands or anything inside that panel, which wouldn't be good. If there was a wall behind me, I could potentially get stuck between the panel and the wall if I were to get electrocuted. You always want a clear path to actually get off and be safe. So in this case, this panel is pretty accessible. There's nothing behind me. Everything looks good. Before I touch it, I want to make sure that there's no stray or foreign voltage on it. So the way I'd do that is I would check it with a voltage tester. Klein Tools is my favorite to use for anything electric. Simply turn it on. She's green. I want to make sure that I know something that's live is actually going to show on this voltage tester. So in this case, she went red. I know it's actually working. So the way I'd test this panel for stray or foreign voltage, I would simply tap around the panel and make sure that, it doesn't go red and there's no stray or foreign voltage. I want to make sure that I'm checking these screws. Reason being is because, the screws that come with these panels are blunt tipped and they're very small. So if your panel's been, replaced at any point, it's a good chance that they lost those original screws. And if a homeowner was in there, the most common screw you're going to find is a wood screw, which is pointed. So if you were to put a wood screw in here and it pierces the back plate, it could potentially pierce a piece of Romex behind it, ultimately livening up the front cover of this panel. There's other ways that it could get stray or foreign voltage, but that's a good common one. We know that this one is good to go. I touched all around, nothing went red, so I feel pretty safe with this. So I'm going to continue the inspection. The first thing that we're going to want to look for on a main panel inspection would be the main service conductors and the entrance. So wherever the actual conduit comes into the building, we're going to look up and see, the hole around it and make sure that there's no cracks or any signs of water intrusion around that entrance there. I also want to look at the ground wire. I want to make sure that I actually see a ground wire going out. This one likely goes outside to a ground rod. You can see there's a small nut on there, and that's for telecommunications to bridge off of the home's ground and ground their services outside. In this case, this one looks pretty good. I also like to look at the insulation up there to see if there's any signs of moisture. But this one looks pretty good. I don't see any issues or, any signs of water getting in. I also like to look for like little pest signs, mouse poo, stuff like that. This one looks all right. I also want to look at the actual condition of this panel. So is there any dents, scrapes, is it, corroded or rusted out or anything like that? In this case, this one's from 2001, so it's kind of new compared to a lot of panels out there. I don't see an issue with this. The only thing aesthetically that I see is that, there's some scrapes here, but that's not a big deal. We're also missing a screw there. Like I said before, with the screws, I want to make sure that the proper screws are in there. In this case, I know these are wood screws. You could tell just by the head of them. Big old red Robbies here. So that's going to be marked on the inspection report that there is, the wrong screws for this panel inside of here, and that we're also missing a screw there. So that's something the customer would want to get fixed. I want to look at the main service breaker. So in this case, it's 100 amps. It usually says it right on the handle there. That's something that's going to be marked on the inspection report. I want to look at all of the labeling here. So in this case, it is labeled, which is good, but The issue I see is that we have a number of breakers that are missing, but we still have labeling on the chart here. So, things could have been moved in the past. We don't know if a homeowner did this, if an electrician did this, if these labels are even right. So it's going to be marked that it is labeled, but you should verify that these breakers are going to where they're saying they're going. With those missing breakers as well, I want to make sure that anything missing has been covered over. So as you can see on breaker number 1, we have a plastic cover here. Usually there'll be a little cover or a metal knockout, which they want to keep in place if they're not using that breaker slot. So we know number 1 is covered, 29 is covered, 31 has a cover, number 2 does not. So when you have a hole in your panel, you're inviting pests to get in, or foreign objects, your fingers, kids are crazy. So you never know what can end up inside of there. So it's always good. I'm going to mark that as a missing knockout. Also with missing knockouts, they're on the side here for where the Romex and, conductors enter the side of the panel. In this case, I could see on our very first knockout, we have a grommet or coupler there, but there is no Romex or wire entering the actual panel. So that's going to be marked on the inspection report because, like I said, you could still get your finger or a mouse could get in there or anything like that. And nothing's really good to get inside of this panel. You don't want anything to get in there. So that will also be marked on the inspection report. I want to make sure that this transformer right here is on the outside of the electrical panel. It is a fail if it is in the inside. So in this case, this one's good. I don't really see any other issues around here. I always like to see the ESA sticker. Obviously, you can't get connected without having an ESA inspection, but it's always good to see, and it kind of gives you a rough date of when the last inspection was, if you can see it. So in this case, it was August 23rd, 2001. Everything else looks pretty good on here. So based on our visual inspection on the outside, we looked at the incoming service conductor and the conduit. We know it's good. We have a good ground up there, it looks like. Don't see any issues. We don't see any signs of moisture or water intrusion. We marked the main panel or the main breaker size as 100 amps. We know we're missing a knockout on number 2. We're also missing a knockout on our side of the box here where the Romex enters. We don't know if this labeling is correct, so that's going to be marked in the inspection report. These screws are incorrect. They'll be marked. Missing screw, that will also be marked. Another thing I like to look for when looking at these panels is, making sure that this Romex or, these conductors are nice and secured to the wall. In this case, they come out only a few inches, on the backer board there. So you don't really need anything securing it down. But if you could see, someone has added an additional piece of Romex here, and they did tack it down. So that's good to see. But a lot of the time, you'll see this backer board with the panel on it, and then the Romex just hanging down from above. In that case, I want to make sure that everything is tacked to the wall and good to go. Other than that, this is looking pretty good. I don't see any real issues with it, just a few minor ones. There is no sub panel or pony panel in this case. It's just one main breaker in this house. This is just a security panel, as you can see. It's got the backup battery. It's been unplugged. This one's not in service. We can ignore that. So, yeah, everything else looks good. I don't see any signs of pests or anything like that. I'd also want to check this outlet here. Make sure she works. I'll actually use a voltage tester that plugs in to make sure that's good to go. Other than that, it looks pretty good. We don't know what's on the inside yet, but I'm going to crack open this thing and see what's going on the inside. But with that being said, this video is for educational and informational purposes only, and I don't recommend that you open up this dead front cover without the proper training or electrical safety awareness. So yeah, that's it. And I'll be back with this bad boy open and show you guys what's going on the inside. All right, everyone, we have the front cover plate off of this panel, and I'm going to show you guys what's going on the inside and things I would typically look for on the inside of the panel. The first thing I want to look at is our main service conductor plate on there? In this case, it is. The way we're going to look to see our main service conductors is through the side here. We can't take this cover off because, it needs to be de-energized in order to take this off. Could be very dangerous. So I like to just look through the side here, and we can see our main neutral conductor coming in. It looks good. There's no signs of corrosion. The screw looks pretty tight. Same thing with this side with the ground. We can see it looks pretty tight. No signs of corrosion. So I'm pretty happy with where our wires enter in. I can't really see our hot there, but should be okay if the other ones are good. I like to make sure our main breaker is sitting correctly in there. We have the right breaker type for our panel. In this case, this one is it. It is good. And like I said, it's 100 amps, as you can see, based on the handle there. So it's going to be marked as a 100 amp panel on the report. I'm going to want to look for any loose wiring inside of this bad boy. So I'm going to go around, and right off the bat, I can see we have a loose ground. Sorry, not focusing. We have a loose ground. If you can't see it, it's this guy right here. I'm going to go through the rest of the panel, make sure I don't see any others. And I don't really see anything, so it should be okay. I'm going to say that's good. I don't see any others, so that one will be marked on the inspection report. Obviously, if there's a wire in there, it should be connected to something, so it could be an issue. I'm going to also look at this neutral bus bar in the back here. So this silver bar that runs down the length of the panel, I want to make sure that every wire looks tight and all of them are white. So they are all neutral wires. This side looks good. And on this side, we should have another. We go down and we could see that they're all neutral. They're all tight, except for that second last one there. That one's okay because that's actually for our transformer. Transformers have 2 blacks and 1 ground. So that's just being used as a neutral. Not a big deal. Nothing to note there. I'm going to want to look at our ground bars next. So we have 2 on the bottom. As you can see, everything looks pretty tight. A little excessive there, but it's all good. Same thing on the left here. We have a smaller ground bar there. It all looks tight. Should be another over here somewhere, probably hidden behind this rat's nest. Right there. So all those look pretty good, nice and tight, no issues. I'm going to want to look at gauge change. So as you can see, all these blue breakers are 15 amps. All these black breakers are 15 amps. This green is a 30, and these grays are 40. So I'm going to want to verify that these wires change gauge as it goes up in breaker size. So you can see it's pretty consistent going through all the 15s. They all look good until you hit these 30s. These 30s, you can see the gauge change goes a little bit higher. And then we return back down to a lower gauge or a smaller gauge when we go back to the 15s. Same thing when we hit these 40s. We got these 40s with a monster cable going in there. So we know that's probably sufficient for that breaker. I'm also going to want to look for exposed copper. So anything with like nicked sheathing. So if there's any cuts in the actual black, red, or white or whatever, I'm going to want to mark that on the inspection report. In this case, these all look pretty solid. I don't see any nicks or anything like that. So that's okay. But one thing I typically do note on the inspection report is you could see all that exposed copper entering the side of the breaker. I like to see the sheathing go right into that breaker, so I know there's no exposed copper. So that one's really bad. Reason being is if something were to come across two of those conductors, it could cause a major issue. So if something bridged between these two, not good. So I'm going to mark that on the inspection report, all those exposed pieces of copper there. I'm going to mark this. This is a homeowner special right here, as you can see. This sheathing should be stripped back from the entrance. So this should all just be pure red or black, white, and bare copper. So that's going to be marked. Not a big deal, but it's something that should be done. I'm going to want to look for any double lugged breakers. So all these breakers are rated for one wire to enter. So as you can see, this side all looks good. All have one conductor going in until we hit these last two. These last two are double lugged. And like I said, these breakers are only rated for one wire. So that screw is doing some OT to try and keep them in there. And, you know, things heat up, expand, contract, all that. So that's something I'm going to want to mark on the report. That's not good. So I'm also going to want to look for misidentified wires. So as you can see, everything is red and black going into these breakers except for this one. So this one has been re-identified as a hot based on that black electrical tape there. You know, electricians are allowed to do this as long as they label the other side the same way. So the issue with that is I'm not going to open up every single outlet or switch or whatever to see if they put that black piece of tape on the other side of the conductor. The reason I like to mark it in the inspection report is because, you know, if people do work on their home, a lot of people feel pretty comfortable working live, especially with something like a 110 or something like that. So someone could potentially think that this neutral is just a neutral, but it's actually being used as a hot. So that's a safety concern I'm going to want to note. And that's pretty much everything else. So I know we have a missing knockout over here. Let's see. I can stick my finger in there, so that's no good. We have a loose ground right here. That's going to be marked. We have two double lug breakers right there. That will also be marked. We have excessive sheathing here. We have a misidentified hot. And I think that was it on this. So we verified incoming service conductors are good. Our breaker is sitting correctly on our main. All these look pretty good. The only issue is that stab lock is not the greatest. So this is Canadian. This is Federal Pioneer. This is not to be confused with Federal Pacific. Federal Pacific had a lot of issues, forging their tests or stuff like that. And it was creating a major fire issue. So the breakers just weren't sitting correctly inside. And there's a few other issues too. So these have had a lot of independent tests by electricians and people alike. They are not the greatest at sitting in there either, but they do not create a fire hazard like the other ones do. So it's something I'm going to want to note, that there has been independent studies on this, and they're not the greatest, but there's no real cause for concern. We verified all of our loose conductors here, which is just our neutral up there, like I said. Our bus bars look okay, ground bars look good. Everything looks locked in where it enters the actual panel, which is good. We do have exposed copper that will be marked. Yeah, I think that was everything inside this panel. And like I was saying on the outside of this, I want to make sure that this transformer is on the outside of the panel and not on the inside. A lot of the time, some people just place them right in there, and that's no good. So, but other than that, I think we got everything in here. We have a number of issues. And like I was saying with these screws, I knew they were wood screws. You can see by the bulbous top, pointed ends. And you could see where it enters in. It's just scratching the casing. And then you hit this. You can kind of see that one's actually starting to nick that piece of Romex. So that is why these are an issue. They're too sharp to be going in this box, and they're too long. As you can see, it passes way past where they need to go. So, but yeah, I think that's everything. I hope to see you guys on the next inspection.